Nellie Harden. Really enjoyed my conversation with Nellie. The view on discipline is absolutely incredible. But I don't like to read, but I just have to read this statement. I truly believe that a family filled with creativity, fun, faith, laughter, challenge, understanding, adventure, problem solving, hugs, good food, sound discipline, and learning can not only change a person's life, but can change the world one living room at a time. She's got 4 daughters. She helps, she coaches families now with, raising their children with, she talks about the first half of the child's life is one way, the second half should be another. You're growing with them, and she has her foundation. Everything that she does is 65-70. And she talks about 65-70, and that's the number of days in your life until you're 18 years old. And it's absolutely fascinating what she does now, her journey to get where she is, how she helps others now. She had some trauma. Her father died when she was young, and she had, some more trauma, and her journey is a very rough one. But now again, she turns it all around and she helps family deal with it with, 4 main pillars of faith, biology. You learn about the other 2 as well, but she talks about discipline, and I'll just tease this. Discipline is teaching. Fascinating take on discipline and what she calls self-led discipline and leadership. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic. I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Oh my, Nellie Harden, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. What is the status of the American family right now?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question to start off with, but so good. First of all, thank you for having me on. And second of all, it's so different. Honestly, because of the pandemic. Before the
Mm,
pandemic, there was a commonplace, a more neutral place that everyone was kind of meeting in. And then the pandemic accentuated a lot of those things. And with kids taking the pandemic in such different ways, the reactions that families have had have also done that. Now, I will say that I've done extensive research this year, especially in 2022, from families all over the world. And I mostly work with families that have daughters between 8 and 18. And there's definitely a congruency there about what parents are facing. It is a lot of social pressures. That's really, really big. And that is something that grew during the pandemic as well, because then they really relied on their social, right? And so social pressures are at an all-time high right now for a lot of our young women out there. And parents are getting very burnt out with it. And then just kind of saying, whatever, teens are teens. they're just going to do whatever. And then the consequences are starting to live out for those teens that were, sophomores, juniors, seniors when the pandemic hit, and now they're afterwards. And now, or I was just on conversations today about kids that were in middle school,
Mm.
and now they're back. And so it's really kind of all over the place and kind of a mess.
Mm. You mentioned, I know you have 4 daughters, you work with, a lot of parents that have daughters. I have 2 daughters myself. I Is there a stark difference in working with, with parents that have sons versus daughters?
Yes, there is definitely a stark difference. There is just mostly you notice it from the biology and psychology standpoint. I deal with a platform really that has a compass of faith, biology, psychology, and culture, and how they all go together, because you really can't just talk about one without affecting another.
Hmm.
And when you're talking about even just biology, which my background is in biology and psychology, I love to know, like, actually functionally what's happening, but then how that manifests into behavior and what's going on there. But when you're talking about how a young woman's brain is and body is and hormones and endocrine system is, and how that affects her then outward behavior versus how a young man does, it's night and day. And so, yes, there's definitely a difference between helping parents raise young women and helping parents raise young men.
Yeah, I always when I talk to friends, I hear, "Oh, girls are the worst," and others say, "Oh, boys are the worst."
Yeah, yeah.
It varies. I'm very fortunate. My daughters really didn't argue that much, but it wasn't that tough for us. I just think, well, it's hard to say, but you have this, your company, your project. I mean, 65, 70, that's the number of, days until they're 18 years old. What a wonderful, way to kind of look at that, to look at those
Mm,
very, very important years. Also your father died when you were very young. Your
mm,
daughter almost drowned, and you were able to, save her. It's an incredible story. And it's amazing how you kind of sought mentorship and it kind of
mm.
brought you on this path. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it really has, retrospect is always a lot clearer than when you're in it. And looking back, I really have been set up in so many ways to do the work that I do with the variety and diversity of things that affect families today.
Mm,
But yes, I always knew that it was wise in order to seek mentorship from people that are where you want to be and on the path to where you are going. And I growing up with my dad passing away so young, I was only 1.5 when he passed. I mean, really,
mm.
he was in his accident when I was 9 months old. And then being alone with my mom, and then all of those things that just propagated with that. I was an adult, or I always like to hang out with adults, right? It was
Mm,
like kids are cool, but can I go like sit at the adult table and talk
mm,
with them? And when my mom started dating my stepdad, they married when I was 8. He was in advertising in downtown Detroit, and he had all these cool friends, and I was the only kid there. And I really learned a little bit there, right there, how to learn and talk with people that are beyond you, and then be able to relate that in how I can, do things in my life right now, even at that young
hmm.
age. And so that's always been just instilled in me personally, that, okay, I'm here. Someone else has been here before, and I'm going to go learn from them. And it's just really important to keep doing that in so many of the areas of your life today.
And how do you find a good mentor?
Well, that can be tricky, and
Yeah.
it's like a lot of things. You go through some rough ones until you find some good ones, and
Mm,
then you really want to interview a person before you start mentoring with them. And even if you can't, some of my mentors have even been deceased, right? Or have been, but I've studied them and studied them.
I
Or they're
see.
people that are not necessarily accessible on the daily basis, but you still study and get their information from them. But then the true gravy is when you can work with somebody and actually have that back and forth, that those answers to your specific questions, right, that are coming in. And sometimes you need to go through some, bad ones before you get to the good ones that fit you. And
Mm.
not necessarily that those mentors are bad. It's just that they aren't the right fit for you. And
Hmm.
I am very, very intentional with making sure that all of my clients know, all the people that I work with and my audiences know, I don't want you to be my family. Like, my family
Mm.
is my family. I want you to be the best of your family with your unique you-ness, right? All of your things that you've been through, all of the things that you want to aspire to. We are here in order to help you make that happen, not to turn you into something that you're not.
Mm. Yeah, and along those lines, you talk about being an effective follower
Mm.
versus just a regular a follower. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, an effective follower is going to be someone that takes action, right? You're
Mm.
not just going along and listening to things and checking the box of, "Oh yeah, I'm following this person. That's great." But how is it making me better and affecting my life so that I can turn around and affect my kid's life? And
Mm.
or with whatever that you're doing, right? And so it's the same with anything. If you're going to school, for instance, and a lot of our kids, oh, so many of our kids go through this, right? They're in, I don't know, let's say algebra, and they have no interest whatsoever, but they got to take it, they got to check the box, and they take the test, it gets purged, they do nothing with it for the rest of their life, and when they're 30 years old, they're trying to figure out how to do a tip on a, when they go out to eat. And so that's just a very, very, very elementary example of what I'm talking about. You're just listening and or not even listening. You're hearing, but not even necessarily listening. And you're definitely not taking action. And action is where the magic happens, when you are learning from somebody and then putting it into effect in your life in order to better where you are going.
Yeah, it's very easy to kind of, follow. I was going to use the term sheep, but it's very easy to kind of follow, but to actually take action, yeah, is something very different. Just moments ago, you kind of mentioned these kind of four pillars. I believe you
Mm.
said faith, biology, culture, and psychology, correct?
Yes.
And how
Yes.
did you arrive at these four?
Well, honestly, through my studies and through life, through my leadership training that I've done, a lot of discipline work that I've done, you
Mm.
always run into these. You always are going to run into these. And so, how your brain works is going to come out into how you behave and how you understand things. And so, right there, the biology psychology dichotomy is so interesting. And when we can help, just for example, when we can help our parent, help parents out there understand the brain chemistry and biology that's happening in their child, then when their kid comes home from school and they are a broken down mess in the kitchen after
Mm.
they've been happy go lucky all day, and they're talking to you about something that happened hours ago and they're just a mess, you're like,
Mm.
I get it. I get it, right?
Right.
Your frontal lobe is not, this isn't necessarily what you say to them, of course, but it's, as a parent, you can understand your frontal lobe isn't fully on board yet, right? Not until they're actually 25, but in these teen years, they are really, really under construction. So
Wow.
when you are looking at your daughter and you're like, wow, you are so dramatic. Yes, there's a reason for that. There is a biological reason why they are psychologically being very dramatic right now. And so then that changes how you respond to that. You just don't get defensive and frustrated and then a power struggle ensues. You can sit down, we can, teach you how to calm down in there depending on your child. It really is not about doing the, right things, so to speak, because there's so many people out there that will be like, well, if you're a parent and, you need to do this, this, and
Mm.
this. Well, that's great, but that's more checking the box. And every parent is different, and every child is different, every family is different. So the true magic is doing the right things for her, for you, for
Mm.
your relationship, for your family. That is where the team mentality of being a family comes in. Parents are the captains, but the family is the team working together for the betterment of everybody in it.
Mm. Yeah, well said. You've got this great statement. I just kept rereading it on the website. I truly believe that a family filled with creativity, fun, faith, laughter, challenge, understanding, adventure, problem solving, hugs, great food, sound discipline, and learning can not only change a person's life, but can change the world one living room at a time.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I truly believe that. We just went on a we went on a kamikaze crazy trip for recently, and it was 7 states, 7 days. 3,000 miles, 37 hours in the car, all 6 of us. So
Wow.
it was a lot. But in that, through people that we interacted with, through people that we saw, through people that we were mentoring, all of this, it was a transformative 10 days for all of us. And when we go through things, we go through them as a family. When we mentor as a family because it's really important that your kids also see servanthood, right? They
Mm,
see humbleness. They see
mm,
problems that are out there that you're helping people with before they ever become a problem for themselves because they are going to have so many strategies on board that they have discussed with you, that they've talked over with you, that if those do become a part of their life, they're going to be set up for success before it ever happens. But anyway, going along that, there were so many people that we saw that we could trace. I mean, I'm talking about people from their, early 20s, some people still in their teens, all the way up to their 60s and 70s, all of these issues that were like, that stems from the 65-70. That stems from the sixty-five
mm.
70. Everything that happens in your 65-70, again, like you were saying, those first 18 years of life,
Yeah.
those become the knee-jerk reactions to everything else. Now, that doesn't mean that things can't change. I know that I have things that I had to change from my 65-70, right? But here's the kicker. I'm how old am I? I think I'm 44. But
I do
I'm
the same
40.
thing.
I know. I'm like, I don't know, you lose track. But so as a 44-year-old woman, when something happens, my knee-jerk reaction is to go back there, right? But then I have to remember that I broke up that cement of that foundation and I put the
Mm.
pieces back in a different way. And now this is what I am doing. But that is such a process. And so the trick is to make the foundation that we are creating for our kids to build that in a way that their knee jerk reactions are going to serve them always.
Yeah, along those same lines, you make a great point in your podcast about, as an adult, you still have some core beliefs,
Mhm.
from your childhood, right? From that 65-70 that are not necessarily good, that are still lingering.
Absolutely. And that takes many, many, many adults just don't think about that because
Mm,
we're in such a busy world, a busy culture, right? And they don't think about how when their child can't do their homework and and the parent snaps at them about something, they don't realize that that's some of their own baggage that they're holding and then passing on, right? So it's really vital to just take a really good look, a really good inventory, and say, okay, what actually are my core beliefs? Not all of them are going to be rosy. In fact,
mm,
I've yet to ever meet somebody that all their core beliefs are just rosy, right? Some of them are going to be painful. Some of them are going to be things that you're like, you know what? I don't want to pass this on. Worthiness is one of the biggest ones that we run into. I am not worthy. I don't matter. So many adults are carrying that baggage today. But then they turn
mm.
that around unintentionally and not because they don't love their child, but they turn around and that gets leaked into the next generation.
Ah.
And then you get this generational wheel that's turning over and over and over. And you can look back, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations and see these women that are stuck in self-worth. These people, I've seen it in men and women, these people that are just stuck in self-worth and they're not moving on with their life where it could be, where their potential is, where their best selves could be, and affecting the world in only the way that they can, that they were created for. They can't do that because they're stuck behind a wall of self-worth. And that's what we want to stop. One of the many things that we want to stop, and as an example of these core beliefs.
When you're working with families, are you working with the parents as well? I mean, you've got to undo a lot of that stuff like you just mentioned and then help the children go through it.
Yes, there is some unlearning that needs to happen,
Yeah,
absolutely. And that brings this beautiful vulnerability piece into the family because when you look at the family as a team and everyone is there to lift everyone up, being able to say, gosh, I have some things that I struggle with sometimes and I don't want that to pass on to you because I love and care about you and honor and respect you. And so, can you help, like a parent asking their child, can you help me stay accountable to me changing in this positive direction? Can you help me? When you give a child the responsibility and respect of being heard and seen enough to help you with something, it
be
changes
comfortable.
a dynamic in the family.
Yeah.
It's so, so beautiful to see. And so we work with the entire family together. So there is and I did this because for a while I was working with parents and I was working separately. I was working with kids and teens. And what I found was when you're working with just parents, then they are the ones that are reporting everything to the teen, which is good for the family environment. But you've had teenagers, it sounds like,
Mm,
and I have them. Sometimes those teens need to hear something from a third party and not
right,
necessarily mom and dad.
right.
And so that part was really vital. And
Mm,
then on the teen side, when I was working with all these teens and I would talk with them and they would get so much out of it and glean so much, but then they would be going home to the same environment, right? These were separate teens than the parents that I was working on.
I see.
And so I was like, okay, well, if we're working and having all these breakthroughs, but you're going home to the same environment over and over, it stunts any growth that you have. So that's why we enveloped the entire family into working together in this program that we have.
Hmm. A, uh, a big storm hits the beach and thousands of starfish are wiped on the beach and
Mm.
they're going to dry out. And the next day, a young person's walking by and they see these thousands of starfish and picks one up and flicks it in the water and continues to do that. And an older person comes by and says, what are you doing? You're not going to get these thousands of starfish in the water. They're going to die. And the young person picks it up and throws it in and goes, yeah, but I made a difference to that one right there. That reminds me what you say, one living room at a time.
Yes, absolutely. I've actually lived out that scenario because we live at the beach
Yeah.
and, only it was jellyfish, but yes, the non-stinging kind, so it's fine, but we would thousands, millions of them would be there, and we would just take our time and do what we could, right? And that's the truth. It really is one living room at a time. When we saw all these people, and I've seen all these people throughout my life and even my own personal experience, if you can just take one life and you can make a difference in that life, what are the ripple effects of that going forward? How can they then affect change to other people down the road, right? And it really has to happen one living room at a time because if you think about it, leadership and proper discipline training, when does that happen for people? It typically happens in the 30s, 40s, 50s,
Right.
right? That is long, long past
Hmm.
any the time that your foundation is being set. And so it's good to listen to. It can have some, great effects on you, but it's still not going to become a part of who you are as nearly as easily, if at all, as if those principles were put into place when you were still in your 65, 70. And part of what I've seen with this, I've been working in leadership for a long time. I worked with Brene Brown for a year and a half, and that
Wow.
was so big, right? And such a great experience. But even in that, my kids, we've always traveled together. And so my kids would come to conferences and things like that. And sure, they'd be coloring in the background or they'd be doing this. But every once in a while, you'd see them. Obviously, they were hearing things and you'd see them look up and just watch a speaker and things like that. And they were really taking in some of those principles, and they have come back to them when they're 13, 15, 17, and been effective in their lives now. And it can happen. We don't give kids enough credit today for
Mm.
what they do. It's very easy to say, kids will be kids and just, they're going to screw up and you just wait till the teen years. They're awful and your hair is going to turn white and fall out and, do whatever. It's going to be terrible. And then what? And then you just leave them out into the world and you say, good luck, right?
Mm.
And so that is where it really comes in. I call parents architects because we are building, designing, and planning the beginning of someone else's life. And that's a really big, humble responsibility that we have. And if we are architects, then that takes intentional planning right there. And the first half of childhood, you're planning for them. The second half, you're building with them. And you can't build
Mm.
for them the whole time because then they're never going to learn how to build for themselves. So there's this transition that happens 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Every kid is different, but there's this transition. It's the sneaky transition that happens in the middle there. And if parents aren't ready for it, they're going to keep on keeping on with what they were
Mm.
doing in the beginning, and they're going to miss the build with you phase.
What an important anecdote there, the building with and yeah, it's yeah, you see some kind of these helicopter parents who just want to kind of continue to protect and not let their children grow a little bit. I coached my daughters in soccer, and generally speaking, the girls were all great, but just one or two parents were difficult. And perhaps they need a little bit of training in this area.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it really just it takes on a different when a family's working together toward these principles, these strategies, toward
Mm,
understanding that they're lifting one another up. I am here for you, and I know that you are here for me. That kind of respect and responsibility, it changes. It just changes a family.
mm. So, on the podcast, we talk a lot about discipline, Nelly. I lost a lot of weight. People always ask me how did I gained a lot of weight. I lost about 140 pounds, I believe. And people ask me how I did. I said discipline. Your
Mm,
take on discipline really you call it self-led discipline and leadership. Your
yes.
great quote that I love, of course, from Jim Rome, discipline is the bridge between, goals and accomplishment. Let's talk about self-led discipline and leadership.
Oh, it's one of my favorite topics. Okay, so yes, I know for me, I was so confused when I was growing up. If you would have asked me what discipline was, I would have been like,
Mm.
trips to the bathroom, which were AKA you're getting a spanking. Um,
Huh.
Want to take a trip to the bathroom? No, right?
Oh, I see.
It was the paddle. It was, just being in trouble. Discipline
Mm.
equaled being in trouble. And just over time and all the work that I've done and people I've worked with, all these things, my life has led up to, I was like, wait, that's not discipline.
Mm.
Discipline is teaching. Discipline is making a way in order. So congratulations to you for doing that. That is amazing. You made a way for yourself to find the better version of yourself, right? The more
Mm.
healthy, more lively, more I can get out and do things with my lifeness, right? And you were able to do that through discipline, through teaching. A lot of the other things that I mentioned before, those are consequences. And when I talk to people, or when I teach people, there's a distinction between discipline
Mm.
and consequence. They're not synonymous, right?
Right.
And so a consequence is the result of something. I always say you can discipline every single day, but hopefully not every day is a consequence day in your home, right? But
Mm.
you can discipline every single day. That's the whole point. Your teenhood, the second half of childhood is the training zone, the training arena for adulthood. And if
Uh,
they don't learn how to discipline their emotions, how to discipline their work habits, how to gain their work ethic, right? How to study and learn, and how to discipline their relationships with other people, how to discipline their social media habits, all of these things. If they don't learn how to discipline those things every day, then they're going to fall big time later on. And so you've seen those little rock towers that people, build next to the water sometimes. They're just
Sure.
pebbles, right? And that is one kind of foundation that you can make. And that is one where you're continuing, like you were saying, that helicopter parenting, there's lawnmower parenting, there's octopus parenting, there's all these kinds of
Ah,
parenting out there, right? That's the kind of tower you're building or foundation you're building for your child then, versus the like a pyramid, right? You think about the big pyramids of Egypt. That's the kind of foundation that will last years and their whole life. It will last their entire life. It doesn't go away with weather. It doesn't fall down. You can't go up to a pyramid and push it over,
mm,
right? That's the kind of foundation that you want to be making. But what's tricky is so many parents are like, well, the biggest fear, and when I asked over 200 families this year, when I asked over 200 families, what is your biggest fear? They said, I'm screwing it up, right?
ah,
That is some of the biggest fear. And what I want to say to everybody is, it's okay to screw up.
mm,
In fact, it's required in life. We have to fall down. And if we are approaching parenthood as, I don't want to screw up, I don't want to screw up, it's this perfectionistic approach that you're having. And it's either all perfect or it's nothing and I'm giving up. Then we're not teaching discipline to our kids, and we're
mm,
not giving them permission to then fall down and learn how to rise back up
ah,
stronger. And so when I talk about, those two foundations, it's not that if you build the pyramid, you never make a mistake. There are thousands of mistakes in a pyramid, but it is strong regardless, right? Because of everything that's been put around it right there. And so when
mm,
I talk about the discipline spectrum, it's really about taking families from a place of parent-led discipline, which is parents are doing the discipline in the child's life. It's do this, don't do that. Either do what I say or don't, and there's a consequence, right?
mm,
And that's where most of our kids are being let off the bus into adulthood. That's where most of them are being let off,
hmm,
versus moving them into self discipline leadership where they will be able to know what to do, trust and know themselves, trust and know others, be able to look into culture, not become the trend, but they can see the trends out there, right? It's see the trend, not be the trend. And you can go out there and you can be respectful, you can be kind, but you don't have to conform to everything, right? And then understanding their biology and their psychology and their faith and where they're all being placed in this world, that is where they're going to find success, because they're going to have two very grounded feet on their foundation that they can launch from, they can lean
mm.
on, they can fall on, and it will always catch them.
Yeah, parents don't have to be perfect.
No, don't be
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. Don't strive for perfection. Just, try to be consistent and best intentions. You love your children, and it'll show, I believe. But your focus is you keep stressing self-led discipline. Is that
Right.
different from just self-discipline?
Well, when you have this there's self discipline, leadership, self led discipline all in there. It's all intrinsic, right? There's so
Mm,
much work that happens in there. And in today's world, I live in the United States. And so I don't know where all of your listeners are, but there's so much information being processed. I remember standing in line at it was like an upside down house or something in Myrtle Beach one time, and we were in line forever. But they had these infographics on the side, and they were comparing the information that our brains are taking in every single day right now compared to what it was in the year 1900, which really
mm,
was not that long ago,
right.
right? That was 122 years ago.
Yes.
And the amount of information that we are taking in right now is like Pa Ingalls, Little House on the Prairie, Pa Ingalls sitting down and memorizing and taking in like 5 Wall Street journals.
Wow.
And my point being that when we can discipline our thoughts and really enforce to our kids and ourselves, you are not your thoughts, you are your choices. Because so much of the world today is telling you, if you think this is who you are, right?
Right.
And that leaves no time, no room for critical thinking, no room for research, no room for having growth in whatever that is. It's just like an assembly line of labels being stuck on everything from anything to anything. And so when they can have that self-led discipline that in their own thought cycle, and really go from this place of, okay, these are all the thoughts that are going on. I think of thoughts like an airport. This is the plane I'm going to actually go and sit in. The rest of them can go away. This is the plane I'm going to sit in. This is a thought I'm actually going to choose to think on for a while. And then think on that. Is this plane actually going to take off? Go through some outer accountability, go through some inner identity accountability. Is this really who I am? Am I the person that? Does this serve my future?
Hmm.
All of these questions. And then you can have a behavior. Behavior is the end point of a thought cycle. And so when we are parenting and we are looking at our kids and they are having some crazy off the wall behavior, it's not the behavior that you need to address. It's the thought cycle that got them there. And having them discipline that thought cycle that is internal, that no one else sees but them or feels but them, that's when you're going to be able to affect real change for your child and your family.
Yeah, fascinating. Behavior. It's not the behavior, it's the thought behind it. It's wonderful to contemplate that because that often is the case. You behave this way, so you should be punished, but you should really be thinking, well, why did you behave that way? What was your thought process there? Very interesting.
Absolutely.
And what do you do with parents? So my father is an Italian immigrant. He didn't is in a poor farm, didn't get his first pair of shoes till he was 12, so when he raised my sister and I here in the States, it's a very different discipline was very different, just a whole kind of shift. You talked about people in the 1900s, consuming information compared to now. I mean, how do you work with a family that has that so much diversity there?
Well, that's when we dive into where you came from, right? A family is made up of where their past has come from, their generational past, not just their own, right? Because as you know,
Mm.
that affects you and where it comes from. And also, where do you want to go? So there's really four areas that we work with in a core. I call it building the map. So where are you right now? Where are you in your parenthood? Where are you in life? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to help your child get off the bus, so to speak, into childhood, right? And then once you have those 2 points, the shortest is of course a straight line, but let's all face it, life is never ever ever a straight line. So it is this series of disciplines. And so discipline is the stop markers on the way there. And then you need to have the desire to go. And so many kids, and this is where it ties into what you're talking about, so many kids today are, the devices that we have are feeding every perceived need that we have, right? If you look at the four top happy hormones in a child or anybody, those are covered. I mean, people that are behind tech industries are not stupid. They're very, very bright and they feed these happy hormones into our kids today. Then
Hmm.
the trick is, hold on a second. If their oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, if all of those are being fed by what's behind this screen, how can we feed them off the screen, right? And stop that information waterfall from flooding into their head every day so they can stop and actually have some critical thinking. I Critical thinking is dying by the masses today,
Mm.
especially in our younger generations. And if we can take them out, the herd is going this way, right? And if we can take them out of the herd we can have a sidebar with them and really talk about, so why are you going over here? What is interested or interesting to you over here? Why are you following this? That goes back to that blind following we were talking about earlier,
Mm.
because everybody is following everybody today, right? And they don't necessarily know why. It's just, oh, so many people follow this person, so I should too. And then you're being influenced, and you have no idea why you ever got there in the first place. And so taking them out of the herd, being able to supply those needs that they have. Every human has 5 needs, and our kids, especially during the teen years, they are explosive. And
Mm.
they need to be heard, and they need to be seen and loved and belong and have a purpose. And those can all be filled on this little screen they have, but we need to bring them perceived filled. We need to take them out and show them where they can really truly be filled, because let's face it, when they're 20, 25, 35, they can't sit on the couch and watch TV with another screen in front of them doing whatever all day. They have to learn how to fill their needs out in the world and be constructive in that. And so, yes, you build the map, you build the way, you build the desire, and then you have to build the strength to get there through resilience and building those muscles up, because they will fall down along the way. I mean, teenhood is a gauntlet of challenges and changes, and we need to prepare them for that.
Is it the most difficult time right now to be a parent?
I've only lived right now, so I would say yes. Only because, and, no disrespect to the thousands of generations that have come before me, and there's been some massive generations that have faced so much physical, issues, so much physical hardships getting out there, and it is hard, 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 hard work. We are facing less physical today, absolutely
Mm.
100%, but the mental and emotional turmoil that is within us and around us all the time now is at an all-time high. I mean,
Right.
there's been talks before, even about war and, all the previous wars that have happened, and how that can equate right now to going out in the quote unquote like war zone of social media and influencers and commercials and advertising and 90,000 streaming services that are trying to get your attention all the time. You go to any university or school or whatever, they're like, you can join these 90 camp or 90 clubs, right? And there's just so much all the time, and it makes you feel very, very small, instead of being in ownership of who you are and having that self-discipline leadership that you can have.
Mm. Is it the most difficult time to be a child?
I would say yes, hands down, because of the pull that is on everybody. Again, there's been physical for a very long time, and
Mm.
now we are in the mental and the emotional era of childhood. And that's internal, right? So when you have a kid that has to get up and work the farm and do all of these things, and it was so, so hard, um, they might, that was hard, but they were settled most times. I cannot speak for everybody, of course, but they were more settled and calm inside. Now, so many of our kids, which is why depression, anxiety, and all of those are at all-time highs, they
Mm.
feel like they are running a sprint marathon internally all the time, even if they're just sitting on the couch watching,
Hmm.
on their phones. It is always running, and not just a jog, but a sprint, and it seems to never end. I was talking with a group of young women who were between 13 and 18 just a few months ago. And I was talking about phones and boundaries around that. And there was very few young women in that group that had their phones go somewhere else at night. I know in my home, we have a box that's actually right behind my head, and phones go in there every night.
Wow.
And so that we don't need these in their rooms. And
Mm.
but what really, really struck me is that there were 3 or 4 young women in this, group that said, "Gosh, I wish my mom would take mine away. I really do." Because those notifications go off at 2 in the
Yeah.
morning, the screen comes on, and they always feel like they have to be in response mode. Like, what's next? What's next? I mean, you think about like firemen or ambulance workers or
Hmm.
ER workers that are always in emergency mode. That's how your kid is feeling at night. Like, oh, I can't go to sleep. I got to check to see if, this new update is out or this new, right? They're in that emergency response. And when that amygdala, their fight or flight area, is so practiced over and over, it's really deterring the development of that frontal cortex, which is where their logic and reasoning is. So there's so many things that play into it today.
It's a big it's fear of missing out. They have this
Oh,
FOMO
yes,
complex.
yes.
It really is. One of your main pillars we talked about earlier was faith, and
Mhm.
faith is a wide spectrum. There's people that are it's just there's people that don't believe at all. There's some that believe in a higher power, and etc. Like, how do you work with a family that has varying degrees of faith?
I do work with people that have varying degrees of faith everywhere. I myself am a Christian. And so many of the principles that we bring in actually requested from some of my previous clients. They're like, can we have some biblical
Hmm.
backup to all of those things? And I said, absolutely. So, we tie faith into there. But even people that don't, quote unquote, don't have faith in not having faith, right?
Right.
There's always faith in there.
Hmm.
And so when I approach people and I talk with people, I come from a Christian background. But my Christian background isn't long. My family just started really working in faith and diving in 12 years ago. So still the majority of my life was spent in that faith and no faith.
Mm.
Right? And so I can definitely resonate with people and where they are and just embrace and bring anyone in, just knowing that these are some of the things we're going to talk about because faith is so foundational to everybody today, no matter what that faith is. But we talk about Christianity in the program that I have.
When you're working with families, your methodology, your practice, your full kind of path there. Is there what's the percentage of science versus art? How much is actually to the book, and how much I really feel this way?
Um, it is so different per family that goes through this,
Mm,
but I in the teachings because we have classroom teachings, we have community, and we have coaching all as a part of this program. So in the classroom teaching is where they are going to get workbooks, and this is it.
mm,
But here is the lesson, here is the theory, here is the facts and the statistics. Now you take this and let's figure out how this applies to you and how you can take this and work this into your family. And that is
mm,
always different for everybody, right? You just sitting and thinking about how to communicate with one another. It's really vitally important that parents get to know kids in the second half of childhood, also in the first, but it is going to be different in the second. And so many parents
yes.
are like, what happened to my nice, cuddly little sweet, whatever, that used to come and just cuddle with me? Well, that's not what they're feeling and going through right now, but that doesn't mean that they should or could be dismissed, right? Because the more you say those type of things, the more they're going to feel very unvalued in who they are right now. And
Mm,
that wall between you is going to get thicker and thicker. Like, oh, she doesn't understand who I am right now. I frankly don't even understand who I am right now as a teenager. And but if she is still looking for that and I am not that anymore, I guess I can't go to her, right?
hmm.
So my point being that everyone's personalities are so different and how a parent is, how a kid is, and when you guys or when families really take the time to get to know one another, then the language that they speak can be understood sometimes for the first time. And it's really beautiful when you understand, the tendencies and why certain people react to certain ways. We were just running into this issue the other day with math studying and tutoring for some people. And this child middle school child, really is a kinesthetic learner, right? They love to learn and move, and, doing facts while on a punching bag or on a trampoline and things like that. It's just the way they are, like that
Mm,
rhythm and balance. But they were being taught, and this person was getting very frustrated with them because they were teaching them verbally. And this child just was not getting it. Even though the child's very, very smart and can do this, they were not getting it whatsoever. And they were like, I just don't know. And there was this huge breakdown, and then the emotions come, and then the emotions start to drive the bus, and that always crashes. So,
mm.
so getting to know them through this work that we do and all of this, getting to know them so that you can apply mechanisms and strategies in order to help them grow into their best self, right? So
Mm.
that is an example right there of you learn the structure, you learn the theory and the strategies, but then you use it in order to help your child.
Well thought out, well laid down. Nelly, do you meditate or journal?
Both.
Wow.
Both. Definitely. I get up in the morning and I have my quiet time, and routines is something we definitely teach. Routines are a wonderful tool to use. We teach emotional, mental, physical tools. But yes, getting up in the morning, I don't speak for probably the first hour of my day.
Wow.
I move my body and I journal, I do some meditation, prayer, quiet time, all of those things. And if my day doesn't start like that, I definitely feel it echoing throughout the rest of the day, because I feel like that sprint marathon is going on inside of me all the time.
I find that consistent with high achievers, the journaling and the meditating, and
Mm.
yeah, developing that routine is really important. Nellie Harden, what motivates you?
Honestly, I don't want to get to the end of my life without using every gift that I have in order to positively affect the world around me. That is if people, what's your biggest fear or whatever, that would be my biggest fear, to get to the end of my life and have wasted some talent or gift that I was given in order to help the world around me. So that's what motivates me every day. When I get up in the morning, it's how can I positively affect the world, which is something that we also teach. It's living inside out instead of outside in. Instead of
Hmm.
waking up in the morning and saying, how's the world going to affect me today? It's how can I affect the world today?
And how do you measure success?
I measure success. That is remember I talked about discipline earlier being a confusing
Yeah.
word. Success is also a confusing word for a lot of people,
Absolutely.
because when you say it, they're like, penthouse corner office, type thing.
Hmm.
And that is not it at all. It could be if that's what that person's success is, but it doesn't mean that at all. So success to me is someone that is going out into the world knowing their worth, having knowing their value and appreciation for themselves and others, respecting others, and being able to have the confidence to speak out and act out in a kind, courageous way in order to affect the world in only the way that they can. So, having that kind of bravery to go out and do whatever you are designed to do. And if it's in you, it's for you. There's some people that have some crazy, wild, audacious ideas. Well, let's work with it. Let's talk about it. Let's see what it is going to manifest itself into in your life. So yeah, that is success to me. And sometimes that means uh working in a 501(c)(3) or a not for profit. Sometimes that means being a parent. Sometimes that means the corner office and being the big corporate whatever. Sometimes that means political office. Sometimes that just means mowing your neighbor's lawn.
Mm.
Whatever it is, it's just success in affecting the world in only the way that you can.
Well said, Nellie Harden. What an absolute pleasure talking to you. When I don't know who it was, reached out to us, and so it's a discipline and what you're doing with families. It's wonderful. You're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a coach, you're inspiring. Your energy is so apparent, and in in everything that you do. I absolutely love it. How can we get in touch with you?
I like to keep it really simple. So my website, just nellieharden.com. You can link up to my social, which is just at Nellie Harden, and our community and our master classes that we have available and things like that. Everything you can find on my website.
Absolutely. And Nellie is Nellie, Harden, HARDEN.com. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope, if my family's around in the North Carolina area where you are, perhaps we can all have, I guess we'd have blue crabs in that area, right?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We would love to.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time, and you be well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.